to give them an intro, but instead I'd like to invite them to give their intros before we dive into the conversation. Nate, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, you bet, Isha. Thanks for having us, and always honored to share a little bit of some of the things we're going through here at Pigment. Longtime enablement leader. I was actually Southwestern for 18 years as a sales leader, but then had the honor to do enablement at Tableau, Salesforce, Gong, Databricks, and now Pigment.
What a
And
list.
from my side, Isha, as you know, I have the pleasure to serve with Nate in the enablement team at Pigment. I joined Pigment nearly 4 years ago. I was one of the first sales reps, and then randomly got into enablement, founded the team that's now a big structure that supports the whole go-to-market organization. I lead revenue programs and some special projects, including the tooling. So that's where Yoodli comes in. And I don't have a sales background. I come from more of a consulting background, which has helped me improve onboarding programs here, really predict performance management and onboarding. And I'm excited to talk about how Yoodli helps us do that today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining. Esha over at Yoodli, one of the co-founders, and we are working with Pigment to roll out a sales enablement training using AI role plays. It's been such a blast working with the Pigment team, and then also being able to work with Nate both at Databricks and now at Pigment. So I'm very excited to dive in and kind of peel back the onion a little bit to really understand what exactly is Pigment doing. What is their sort of thesis and approach around role plays, and how is Udly contributing or not contributing? Please feel free to be honest to that broader mission. So to kick things off, Nate, I'd love to turn attention over to you first around what do you think, kind of broadly speaking, what do you think is the main problem enablement leaders are trying to solve today?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I mean, Andres, what a great intro of yourself. I mean, amazing. So honored to work with you, and you're so talented. And obviously, you're a huge champion of Udemy, and I'm going to talk about kind of us teaming and partnering and recommendations moving forward. But at the highest level, I think enablement is especially mission critical, needed team and role. And I've found over the years where 15, 16 years ago, there was training that was out there. I think it was pretty standard where you felt you did an hour of training that people would get it and change behavior. And over time, we know that. There's been even articles going out over the years that said, that now training isn't working, and they know this. And the data, we have so much better data out there. One example of that is when we say that typically, if you don't apply something you learn, by the way, this is for people in tech, this is for students, this is for all of us. If you don't apply something that day or implement it, 75% of it will be forgotten the next day, basically 24 hours later. So listen, these are good things that we now have the data. We can make some really good execution on it. One other really important component, I mean, there's innovation right now, especially in tech. It's such a fun space to be in. Obviously, AI is evolving, and it's just a great opportunity to kind of embrace how fast and how quickly we are moving in educating, whether it's AI, whether it's large language models, whether it's things within our own company. Pigment, as an example, we launched 100+ features last year, and all of those features have great value. And then how do you make sure that teams can not only be educated, but can articulate in front of customers and partners the value and differentiators? So I feel like no matter what company you're at, large or small, this idea of still making sure that you can enable change behavior. And then obviously there's so much innovation out there that enablement now is mission critical team. Obviously Andres and I will jump in more deeper on that.
Yeah, that's really helpful to hear. And it's something that we've been hearing amongst different enablement professionals, both customers or not, around how traditional learning in the historically was sort of this standard webinars, podcasts, PDFs, but then folks were running into issues of data retention and knowledge understanding of really complex topics. Um, I'm curious, and maybe also would love to hear from you, Andres, as well. Have you seen this to be a problem at Pigment where it's had for you, you've had to reconsider what you can do to help with that knowledge understanding?
Andres, why don't you go go first, and then I'll go second.
Absolutely. So Nate mentioned the 100 plus features that we shipped, but he didn't get into how complex the problem we solve is. We can really solve a variety of business problems across many industries, many areas of planning, and certifying that reps know and have the competence to generate the outputs they need to generate and on the job to get paid is nearly impossible if you can't scale with technology and specifically with AI. So it's just doing that at speed. I think the main theme that you'll hear today about is speed. How can you hear things from the market quickly, put it into a package where reps can consume it and then test it to make sure that they can really react quickly to what's happening in the field.
Yeah, great answer, Andres. Yeah, it was a nice way of saying, a good way to articulate how to problems we're solving. By the way, Batman, Robin, and metaphor analogy. I think Andres, you're Batman, I'm Robin, so we're still tagging this team here at Pigment. Look at even Isha's clapping. Listen, I think that's amen, and I'll say and I think at Pigment we're hiring a bunch of new people. I'm sure this is now happening all over, and I'm seeing it with a lot of my peers at other enablement companies. And so we're having all these new people coming into Pigment, whether you're sellers, leaders, partners, and we are, surely a very hot company in Europe. One, got announced this last year as visionary in the Magic Quadrant. So we're really excited as we're kind of going up the Magic Quadrant. And I think a big part of that is we're now starting to hire. We're obviously expanding into the US. Hopefully someday we'll get into Asia Pacific. We're based out of France. And so this idea, we're hiring so many new people. How do we get them up to speed? How do we ramp them? And I think, onboarding, and I still think that's probably one of the most important parts of enablement is having that a world-class program. And we'll obviously, talk about tools in a second, but I'm starting to see this more and more. Companies are hiring more and more people, or they're using AI to make sure that those people are productive. And we can talk about that too. Batman and Robin, that's my Robin answer. I'll let Batman maybe share some more.
Wait, so
Andres,
you're
anything else I
Robin,
missed?
I'm Batman, or
That's right. That's right. That's right.
okay, yeah, thank
Couldn't
you.
agree more with the Batman and Robin
Yeah, that's
analogy.
right. That's right. I've never used that analogy either before, so let's see if it works.
I
Listeners can tell us.
it'll scale culturally. So
That's right. Okay, good.
um that's fascinating, folks. So first off, congratulations on the massive growth that Pigment is seeing with hiring and international expansion. That's incredible. I hope that Yoodli can do that someday, and we will look to you all for inspiration on how to do that. Um, Second of all, that must be a really challenging problem. Scaling, hiring, making sure all of the reps are onboarded. And I really like what you both said around paying attention to onboarding programs specifically, just so that first 30, 60, 90 experience is excellent. I'm assuming there's also some reliance upon managers for development of reps. How does Pigment think about that?
Andres, maybe I'll let Robin go first here,
Yeah,
then Batman second on this. I mean, I think this is even before we talk about Pigment. I'll go back to the early days at Tableau, and was really honored to be there early. So one of the great honors of me being at Tableau is that we started pre-IPO, so 2012, even before we were public, we had 3 enablement professionals, and we had built that up to over 80, which I thought was a fairly large enablement team until Salesforce acquired us, and they had over 300. Now things have changed, and I understand, with tools and others, it's a little bit smaller, but still a lot of enablement people. The number one mistake, and again, this was on my leadership, that I think we could have done better is we did too much enablement to rep versus enablement to leader and then leader to rep. And now I'll talk about Pigment, and Andres, please chime in. We did this together when we rolled out at the start of the year our sales kickoff, our new messaging, and most companies do new messaging, new differentiators. Typically, it's launched at the same time, but it's one of the things I think we did really well and learned from the mistake earlier in my career, which is we trained the managers first. And actually, kudos to the CRO. He actually did the messaging first in front of the entire team, and then we did the training. And so not only did we train the managers, but another tip, and we did this also when I was at Gong running enablement, is the CRO actually learned the messaging first, then we trained the managers, and then rolled it out to the field. And then, by the way, another mistake made and lesson learned too, make sure your partners are trained. So if you're rolling out a new messaging example, now all of these is as we obviously, for the listeners that know Udily, understand why I'm a huge fan of manager enablement, but also creating a safe space where people can practice and role play. And when you have new messaging rolled out, not only do you want the leaders to be able to practice, but also be able to use repetition over and over again. And you don't have to wait, especially when you get something introduced early. You don't have to wait if you're using AI and using tools to get some early coaching. So, anyways, I think Pigment's no different, and I think that's something that we're seeing some really good wins from. Still early, but training managers first, making sure they not only know the new messaging, but they can actually practice in a safe space. Then, when they get in front of their teams, they can not only reinforce it, but they can actually model the right behavior. Okay, Andres, so let me anything I missed or anything you want to reinforce.
What I'll reinforce is sales managers have one of the toughest jobs out there. Like they have so many things they need to do. They need to forecast. They need to go on deals. They need to hire. To make it specific about the onboarding, when you are a fast-growing company like ours and you're hiring your first reps, those first reps get a lot of love and time from the managers. But as you scale, managers just don't have the time. Managers do not have time. And to get reps ramped quickly and certified that they have the competence to generate the outputs that will get them paid. So by outputs, we mean a good qualification call, a good point of view on an account. Managers need to certify that competency, but they can't be in the room. So that's the main problem that we're solving with Yoodli is saving managers time from role plays. So we needed a way to have people get up to speed fast, help them build confidence through practice in real situations. So simulating cold calls, simulating qualification calls, without the manager having to be there in the room to certify that knowledge.
Mhm.
And there's an additional complexity that we had. Managers, the managers that we hired come from different competitors of ours or different sales methodologies, so there was no standard across how they coached. So Udemy also gives us that standard. So absolutely, the main thing that we're getting here is speed in which managers can be confident that their reps have the competence, and in the speed that we as a central business have the data about okay, what's working, what's not working, either at an individual rep level or at a program level. What do we need to change?
Yeah, well
Incredible.
said.
Yeah, super well said. Okay, so just to summarize what I'm hearing across both Andres and Nate, I'm hearing fast-growing company need to hire managers quickly. Each manager comes in with their own set of methodologies and practices, and maybe their own personal experience about what they did when they were sellers, which means that different reps could be getting both different attention, but also different types of coaching. And so, Nate, from your standpoint, you're saying, don't just focus on seller enablement, focus on manager enablement and also partner enablement to ensure that there's consistency of coaching. But then if you take it a step further, when you combine it with the growth, Andres, what you're saying is managers don't have time to coach in the way that we would want them to. So even though they're coaching the same thing, different reps are getting inconsistent amounts of attention and help. And also, reps are not treated equal. Folks come in with different types of experience, different comfort levels. Some might be more tech savvy, some may not be. Some might already be from, hailing from Europe and so can better sell the product in the European market, but maybe not in other markets. So lots of factors and variables that we can't control here. Looks like this is maybe what inspired you all to start evaluating AI tooling to help consolidate this. Um, can you share a little bit about why specifically you were looking at role play platforms with AI as opposed to different types of platforms that could help with these problems?
So I can start. First, it's because we hired Nate Vogel and he wants to put AI everywhere.
Mhm.
I'm scared that eventually he'll replace my job. But one of the
Our
things for
jobs, by the way, our jobs.
our
Not,
job,
yeah, that's right.
our job.
Mine included.
Yeah.
It's we we didn't have a scalable way for managers to validate whether reps were competent or not across the many use cases we cover, the many industries we cover, and By competence, we mean, can they make the right decisions on the job? Can they perform the tasks to produce the outputs that will get them paid on the job? And we didn't have that because managers didn't have time to do that. So usually, and AI role plays give us that. It gives us a way to simulate very realistic, high pressure role plays where reps are challenged. They need to respond with urgency. They get immediate feedback, and the coaching bot is great, and they see how their choices play out. So we can certify that competence, and we can do it at scale and with consistency. And as a central business team, how we feel is that we're confident that reps are truly ready, and it frees us up time, it frees the managers up time so that we can create the right environment so these outputs, these qualification calls, these cold calls, these territory plans, account plans, they get up to the next level. So we can focus on the right things instead of spending time role playing and coaching on role plays. We just track behavior on the job, and we do that with Gong. And if we notice gaps, we recertify the competence, and we just iterate on our programs, either individually or at a program level.
Yeah, no, I'll just say a couple other additional comments, and maybe I'll go on record on the AI because I know listeners always we kid about losing jobs. I will maybe should go on record. One of the great honors I have in Seattle is the University of Washington has a business school called the Foster School of Business. They actually have a sales program. You can actually get a minor in sales. I think there's only 197 schools in the United States that actually do this. And so I'm on the board and I get asked all the time this question about AI. I always say that's what Andres, it's true. I mean, everything we're doing, I'm trying to pause and see, can AI help us be more productive? Can we, especially with role plays, I was always in Isha, well before we became a customer at Databricks and now at Pigment, I was just trying to figure out a way to get 25% better, whether leaders 25% saving time, reps 25% better before they ask managers help. So I was trying to keep it really simple, but we kind of, you hear around some of the technology leaders talking about losing jobs. I think it's an and, not an or. This is my positive spin on AI. I think it's going to help us be way more productive. And you can take that time and upskill. And so that's one of the things that I think, AI might be replacing some of the things that we do today, but I think it's going to give us also a lot more time to be creative. So, anyways, want to go on record on that. My most important point, and Andres hit it, we're trying to just continue to upskill and up level all of us, including myself, getting in front of presentations and being able to even do this type of thing to be able to use role plays and practice in advance of anyone else's help. One other thing I love about AI, it's 24 hours a day, Monday through Sunday. In other words, you can use tools and technology when you need it, when it's appropriate. And so I think this is something we're seeing, especially here at Pigment, where people are starting to use it. And by the way, kudos to Andres. And this is a high recommendation for folks implementing Udily. Get a champion. We took the new messaging. Andres, correct me, make sure I'm saying this all correct. We put it actually into Udily. We wanted to make sure that the data and the large language model and content we're putting in actually was accurate. And that's one of the really important components around AI is making sure there's no hallucinations. And more importantly, like the data and what we want is accurate. And then this is the really fun part about it being an enablement. There's lots of personas that we sell into it. Pigment, we sell into a lot of the C-suite, specifically in the finance space, supply chain. When I was at Databricks, it was more at the CIO level. At Gong, the number one persona actually was enablement, ops, operations, and CROs. So the cool and great part about AI, you can actually train the model and really make sure that the number one persona or that you sell to, can become experts on how to communicate. And I think Andres, you did a great job because you actually did it and practiced it yourself multiple times to make sure it was accurate. And then we rolled it out. And Andres, I'm sure you might have a few comments on that. But I think that's when you make AI really productive and it helps you be better, surely over 25%. And it's accurate. And when people use Udemy, they go, that was really good. That was actually that felt real. That's the answers you want. And then ultimately we're more productive. But Andres, I'll let you chime in.
No, I agree with Nate. Gaining that
He said
productivity
agree with me, by the way.
yeah,
Isha's
I
first time he
normally
said
don't.
that, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah, okay, yeah.
I really
It's on
normally
record.
never.
Yeah, it's on records. It's recorded.
Because because if you want to build realistic scenarios that reps feel that add value to them, you need to become really a pro with the tech. One of the surprising things about Yoodli is how powerful the technology is, but with power comes complexity. So getting it right is you're not going to get it right the first time around. You need to be hands-on. You need to be proficient with prompting, with AI, with technology, with the workflows. You need to really understand the seller's world. I was a former seller at Pigment, so I understand really well the pain of the customer, the seller experience, and I know that I can build scenarios that really simulate what can happen on the job. So absolutely I agree with Nate. If you're going to implement a tool like this and you want to squeeze all the value from it, get someone hands-on that really gets the problem that they're solving and what the reps need to adapt scenarios to that and make the coaching relevant.
And Andres, perfect. And we're really focused on sellers, but ultimately we want to make sure then we can roll this out to CX, customer success. Such a
Mhm.
great use case here. Then you can, start rolling out to partners and other components of your business to execute on that. I think we're really still fine tuning that with AEs, but we're starting to see some really good wins and results.
Totally. And Andre, shout out to you for being, formerly a seller at Pigment and then now running some of the enablement operations and being the Udly champion. Can attest to some of the so much of the empathy that you bring forward in how you implement Udly in terms of how it shows up for sellers and the kind of benefit and value Udly provides to them, but then also the feedback you get from sellers, which then gets reinforced in terms of prompt engineering and the flow. So I've noticed that. I appreciate it. And as you both mentioned, I think, a broader shout out to just in general, all the implementers out there that are working tirelessly to make sure that a tool is not just sitting on the shelf, but also providing value to go-to-market teams. So wanted to do a quick shout out in the middle of this to you for that. Um, Nate, I really liked what you said around having role plays for sales training development or CX or broadly speaking communications development being 24/7, always accessible. Um, Ton of role-playing tools out there. In fact, Udly started off as an AI-powered public speaking platform
Mhm.
because my co-founder and I really felt strongly around women, people of color, and in my co-founder's case, people from India, not having sort of the public speaking capabilities that we felt that everyone should have, especially if you've got great ideas. But in general, kind of
Mhm.
a right to live is being able to speak and share your ideas. And we notice, oh my goodness, like people don't get the opportunities they deserve. And so for us, that's been a large part of our story and a reason why people like Udly. But I'm curious to hear from you all. Out of all of the solutions out there, why Udly as opposed to another great option?
Andres, you want to go first since you were obviously the key champion and we did look at other vendors, and then I can share, kind of my perspective too on not only here but Databricks too.
Sure. So this is hot category of software, right? People want to get into it. And what the tools that we were evaluating, what it seemed is that they were trying to focus on maybe doing too many things, including like conversational intelligence, where Udly was really trying to solve the problem that we wanted to solve, which is saving managers time with world class, realistic scenarios that give coaching in real time. So it was really that vertical play of solving the exact problem that we needed to solve. And but also we realized that the problem that we have right now is in sales, but we run many programs around leaders enablement. HR has their training programs, and it could really help us embed lots of projects that we had, not just specific to our sales programs. So it was the combination of being very specific about how they address the problem that we have right now, and also the problems that we might have in the future across other areas, specific to role playing, and nothing else than role playing.
Yeah, perfect answer, Batman. That was good. I think it's I'm a big fan of whatever tools and technology that you invest in, that they should be world class. Sometimes I get some of my peers, and again, I've been blessed to be in the profession, whether it's peers from Tableau or Salesforce or peers that are Gong and Databricks, obviously, and Pigment. But also when I was at Gong, about 2 years of my role was being customer facing and being able to get in front of customers. And sometimes customers are like, oh, the space is so confusing. Everyone is saying the same thing. They can do that for cheaper or they can do it faster. And one of the biggest things is like do a POC, proof of concept, get hands-on in the technology. And I think, Andres, that's where we saw this not only at Databricks, but surely at Pigment. When you use the technology and you see how first it's easy to use, it's actually understandable, and more importantly, to Andres's earlier part around the AI, and it actually worked and everything that we wanted it to do was not excellent. And for multiple features and functions that we saw just the value. And I'm just a huge fan of like if you're going to invest in tools, do it in a world-class way. Tell some of my enablement peers, good enough is not good enough. And the reason why I say that is because think about every program that we're getting ready to launch, we're attaching role plays as a component of this. So really exciting announcement and part of our features here at Pigment. We're announcing in more depth. We've obviously have AI, but agentic AI. But some of the features that we're getting ready to launch in Pigment is mission critical. We're going to make sure the entire field, from a mandatory standpoint, actually is educated, and we're going to make sure that Udemy is part of that program where they can actually practice. That's part of the actual training, is they're going to have a chance to actually work on this. We're going to train the leaders and so on and use role playing and practicing. That has to be world class. And so that's, kind of tip number one specifically. Also, Isha, one thing that, and, kudos to you and the team that we're finding when you invest in technology, and we hope, by the way, our customers are saying the same thing about Pigment. We're seeing that in some of the data. And surely one reason why, again, we were called out in the Magic Quadrant is it's sometimes easy to buy software, but to make that software from the proof of concept actually work in implementation, that's why Andres's role is so super important, is does it actually do what it said it was supposed to do? And that's where support, education, community, all of that makes a lot of really important steps. So not only did we invest just from the world class, technology, but we have found, again, kudos to Udemy and the entire team, that they're completely helping us with support issues, making sure we're up to speed, make sure we're running, at a world class level, and then consistently introducing us to other customers so we can learn from each other. And I think that, by the way, is now becoming a really important part of buying software.
I agree, Nate, and I want to add something because we did evaluate a bunch of tools like Yoodli, and what really stood out, and shout out to my boy AJ, who was the AE in the account, was how customer centric the process was and how value centric it was. Like AJ and the team actually like guided us to what we needed, and we talked about adoption from the first call, first qualification call, up until every call we've had till now. And we're always talking about that, about value. I don't think we ever had a sales conversation. It was always a business conversation. How do we make our reps better? How do we save our managers time? Even towards the end of the cycle, we had some issues with the budget wasn't approved, procurement slowed us down. AJ always kept the same mindset of, hey, I want to add value to you, regardless if I retire my quota or not. And that really, you stood out against other competitors in that sense.
Yeah, well said. Again, man, everything you're saying, Andre, is really, really good. You must have used Udemy to nail this role play and nail your answers. Well said.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, I would say you should. It sounds like we're having a little too much fun here at Pigment. It's so important, by the way. And I have, maybe I'll just follow up to his comment. We're trying to look at tools that we invest in literally as like a head count. And Andres and I actually have a strategy doc that we're showcasing all of our programs and all the. And by the way, let's get to data too soon, because one other thing we really liked about Udemy is the data and seeing how when you roll out an enablement initiative and you can actually see the implementation, and we can actually track some of the best reps, and they're, referencing that they were practicing. By the way, this isn't just selling, but we'll get to the data in a second. But Andres is so super important, which is we're actually trying to, every tool we invest in is literally like a headcount. In other words, I've got, certain amount of people on my team, and then I have certain amount of tools, and you need to have one-on-ones with those tools. You need to stay up because new features like that are Udemy's launching all the time. So it's no different. We got to keep up to speed. We got to be on it. We got to be innovative. And I found that mind shift, and understand, I think I've done a nice job of this along with all of our Pigment enablement leaders, that we're saying, okay, here's the certain amount of people on the team, here's all the tools we have, and we're literally spending that much time obviously doing these type of things too, because we know how important that is. And that, by the way, especially AI tools, that is the productivity gain. And literally I say to myself, hey, I got, a team of 9, 10 people, and then I've got a, team of 3, 4 AI tools, and in total we have 13, 14 people on the team. And so it's a mind shift, and then ultimately that should help us track and showcase productivity.
The data piece is really interesting. I want to dive into it. Andres, thanks for the shout out to AJ. I'm excited to share this with him. And even from my standpoint, can confirm the number of times that I go to AJ and I'm like, AJ, how do we keep embedding value into conversations, and also teach me a thing or two about sales? So I'm part of this AJ celebration camp. Um, Nate, going back to the data piece, I think it's super interesting, and also the concept of AIs and headcount. I'm starting to understand more and more what you mean as you say that. Just given, how when you have a tool that's so embedded into your workflows, then it needs to have proper love and attention around how it's changing, but also if it's aligning to your workflows. And so I did want to talk about the workflow piece as well. But with regards to data, how do you all constantly ensure that the data is up to date, not just within Udemy, but in any AI tool that you have, so that it's accurately reflecting messaging, marketing, etc.?
Maybe I'll go at the highest level, and then Andres, please chime in, because I think we're doing really good work here. I'll first just say shout out to all the enablement leaders and professionals out there. It's very hard to measure enablement impact effectiveness, and you hear this all the time. It's probably one of the top questions I get. Is, how do you showcase ROI? How do you showcase value? And I will tell people it's difficult. And it's one of the things that I actually love about this profession over the last few years, specifically because now with tools, you can start to see really good data and really good leading and lagging indicators to give you a data point of view to see impact. And let me be specific about that. As an example, when we rolled out the new messaging, by the way, not only did obviously here at Pigment, but did at Databricks, did it at Gong, we had the same thing. We got first of all, CSAT and sentiment just on the overall training, whether it was in person or virtual. And by the way, it's still super important. Sometimes I hear enablement leaders say, oh, I don't care about sentiment anymore. I do. Andres knows this because we view our sellers and the go-to-market team, marketing, sales, customer success partners as our customers. So sentiment is, by the way, super important. Then I want to make sure the CSAT, that's the training, that's a data point. Then we can start seeing, even measuring people's confidence level. You can measure, even maybe we could have Esha measure someone's confidence level before this podcast, during this podcast, after this podcast, 30, 60, 90 days, and see the implementation of confidence level. So confidence level, and again, kudos to a lot of my great enablement leaders in my past. Databricks did amazing at this. Gong did amazing at this. So measuring confidence level, not just before the training, during the training, but multiple months after the training. By the way, 2, 3 months after the training, and you see confidence low. And Andres, we did some of this recently. You go, oh, we need to retrain. They didn't get it. They didn't nail it. Then to Andres's earlier part, you can train on that specific messaging, which we did. Then we set up trackers. This is what, again, love the technology of Gong, and we're big Gong fans here too. And that is, we can then set up smart trackers for all the new messaging that we're showcasing to customers. So when we say, things like Elastic Canvas, or we say things like our agentic AI, or we say new features like connected planning and other messaging components, we can now track it and see adoption. By the way, this is a home run. When I was doing enabling Tableau, and I think we were very, very good. And so was Salesforce, but we didn't have the tools at the time to really measure post enablement. And then you could start seeing, which we're just starting to do, it takes time. Now you can start seeing, well, the best reps are using the messaging. We can capture the calls and share best practices with the field, which we're now doing. And then we can now start seeing win rates. Are the best reps using the new messaging or not? And so the idea then is you can then go back to ROI or value to enablement. So this framework is really valuable. And I think now a lot of enablement professionals are applying that. By the way, it can be applied to new messaging, it can be applied to new product, it can be applied to competitive enablement. And this is where it's starting to be really fun to start seeing the data. And then Andres and I will please chime in. With Udily too, we can then see if we use Udily in that implementation and the training or not, and how fast did we ramp on the messaging? Did it take a month or two for them to really nail it? Or because they practice so much themselves using AI, using role play? And by the way, maybe the AI is so good, they don't even need the manager's help because the manager listens to a call and says, oh, wow, they don't need coaching. I still think coaching is important to even get the A players, A plus, and so on. But the data now is so powerful. Also, you see the gaps. And listen, let me be clear. Andres and I see the gaps, and we now see it. We know what we need to go do better on. One of the key words that wasn't being actually used that much was Pigment's great UX design. Actually, our customers are saying, like, when you see Pigment, a lot like Udily, but when you see it, wow, this design's amazing. So we're wondering, why are reps not saying it as much as they should? And we're now making sure that we're reinforcing that. We can track how many times reps say Magic Quadrant and Visionary category, which I said earlier. So I get a plus for that. And the data. And then enablement leaders can go back to our executives and to our team and say, hey, here's the data. And here's things we need to reinforce and improve. So Andres, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this too, but
A lot of thoughts, and here I want to give a shout out to another Yoodli champion, who's Nick Lawrence at Databricks. Nick is he's a
amen.
mentor of mine. He's an expert in the Kirkpatrick model, and we, like Nick, always are thinking about business results. How can we affect ARR, pipeline, conversion? But then there's two challenges with how enablement's measured today. One is, how do you connect the behavior on the job to those business results, so that bridge. And another one that's even a bigger problem is, how do you connect those metrics that Nate mentioned on CSAT or Learning Reactor to actually seeing the behavior on the job, and that's through certifying competence. And this is where you really helps us. You and AI role play, it can tell you this rep has the competence to make the decisions they need to make on the job to generate certain outputs. Without this realistic scenarios, we wouldn't have a way to do that. So going back to the data, for us, especially important in enterprise. When you hire an enterprise rep, you need to wait 9, 12, 16 months to see some productivity in the form of ARR. So that delay is expensive. It costs a ton of money because you need to wait to pivot what you're doing with them or make a performance decision. So what Yoodli and the rest of the programs that we're building, capturing from L1 to L4 metrics in Kirkpatrick, gives us early signals, earlier feedback loop of what's working, what's not working, where are our reps not competent, and what can we do about it. So the system we've built, and Udly's a part of that, is built based on some outputs, and those outputs help us save the business a ton of money, over $1 million a year, by identifying early when underperformance is going to happen.
It's great.
Data. Thank you both for sharing that. It's I mean, wonderful to. I'm also learning too about some more nuances with Pigment's flows. Um, Also, Nate, I think a really exceptional point around how the reps can be fed with new messaging that tends to be more around like new pricing strategy, new pitch with talking points, new product release. But then also going back to being super customer forward, if customers are saying things that don't necessarily align with like a pitch talk track, such as your design is really sleek, like that also should be fed back into sales.
Hmm.
And I think I don't know too many companies that are that um, at least vocal about doing that, like customer feedback directly into talk track. And so that's a good reminder to all of us to make sure we're doing that.
Yeah, and the data's the greatest part about, and I think this is, the saying that data is the really the gold, and we're seeing that at Pigment. Not only are you seeing some of the best reps in the way it's being positioned, but one of the things I remember when we rolled out new messaging at Gong, we were saying something over and over again, and you could just see customers were either not commenting or confused by it, or we were actually talking too much about Gong. And what we started actually talking about was what customers wanted to know is what are our integrations? And so when we started talking about integrations, and a lot is still focused around consolidation. So if you have a tool or technology, how do you have integrations? By the way, Udemy has some great integrations. Pigment has some great integrations. We were seeing the data 2, 3x more success when we talked about integrations than we just talked about Gong and how we could help. And so I think that's another shout out. And that's something we're also starting to see how much customers are wanting to ask us around not only our integrations, but surely at Pigment, like what's our ecosystem? How do we make sure that when we do buy, we have modelers, people that become experts in our product? How do we get them up to speed? How do we get them certified? How do we get them trained? And we're having those conversations early in the sales cycle so we can start seeing the data behind it. And obviously, we can make sure reps can articulate in practice when you position our academy and our community and our education offerings here at Pigment. How do you do that early in the discovery conversations versus at the end of the sale? And so we know that that's also something that customers want to know. We can then track the data and see it.
Andres, did you have anything you wanted to add on this particular topic?
No, just find leaders that in enablement really care about the data, because it's it's hard to get in front of reps and sales managers and take their time if you can't prove that you're actually going to make them more productive and get them paid. So the classic "what's in it for me," how Nate starts, every call, every team meeting, data, 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 data.
Excellent.
Yeah, Ishan also Andres hit it. Like, let's learn from each other. I mean, Nick was such a great Nick Lawrence at Databricks, and you should definitely have the Databricks team on. They surely are great champions of Udemy, and obviously trying to solve some of the same problems we're doing here. But I think we all learn from each other. And surely we actually had Nick come and join a team call and share, like, okay, here's how we think about measurement and enablement. And then Andres and I and the team were like, okay, how do we improve our L1 through L4 metrics? And if you haven't study the Kirkpatrick model, which is a pretty standard model for measuring enablement, but it's an easy model. It's actually very hard to like showcase those L1 through L4 results, but we're really becoming like masters of the craft, and we're trying to continue to make sure that we're keeping the bar high here at Pigment, and more importantly, the customers, which is our internal team and partners, that they're being served well and ultimately can hit and exceed the number and be productive. I've always said too, if the team hits the number and exceeds the number, then we were partly responsible for that. But if we miss and we don't hit the targets that the company and the board and the founders have set, then enablement is also responsible. We look right in the mirror and say we haven't done enough. And surely here at Pigment, we can definitely do more. And something that Andre Sai and all of the Pigment name team get a lot of credit. We think about this every day. How can we serve our customers and partners better?
Well said. Okay, we've got one final question before we do the final question, which is more of a fun question. So the final, second to last final question is, what's been something unexpected from each of you about rolling out AI role plays in Pigment? And Nate, feel free to pull from the Databricks experience when you were there too.
Andres, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I can start. I think one of the big surprises that I had is that AI role plays are not any more or less awkward than real role plays. If anything, they're less awkward because you're doing it with a machine. So reps would rather do that than doing it with their manager or one of their peers. So that's surprising because it's less awkward, but then you win consistency. And that's something that I didn't expect. I was really expecting a lot more pushback from reps. Another thing that stood out is especially reps in their earlier career journey, say like junior sales reps or BDRs, they love Yoodli. And one of the data points that amazes me is when reps are trying to move from a BDR role to a mid market role, which we give a lot of opportunities for our BDRs here at Pigment to progress their careers, their Yoodli scenarios just skyrocket. And you see these BDRs doing 100, 120 role plays. So it's actually a confidence building tool. So that's been one of the pleasant surprises that we've had.
Yeah, I'll say I think the surprise for me always is the model is really accurate. And kudos to Andres and the team for getting that down well. But if you, it's a little bit like if you work on upfront to make sure the data and you work hard on the model, meaning in other words that you feed it all the content and knowledge that model needs to understand our business. It's surprising how good it is. And to Andres' point, you actually go, that was good, and the data is accurate, and AI coaching is accurate, and you realize I can do better. And even things around ums and ahs and pausing and the fundamental key parts of communication is still really valuable. So for me, especially, every few months, you're seeing the models and models get better and better. And I think that's again exciting because once you can train it and teach it, then it becomes very accurate. And then of course, you can use that other time, savings to increase productivity in other areas. Maybe you say, okay, I've got the role play down. Now I'm going to go study my competitive playbook. Or hey, I'm going to make sure that I've got really good knowledge with our partners. And so again, versus like I'm going to practice, 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 or the opposite. Another surprise, there are actually a lot of people that don't practice and they wing it. And listen, I tell you, lots of people tried to sell me as head of enablement for all the companies that I've been at. I can tell, by the way, if they've been trained with AI and they can only go a surface level. Because if I ask a question, yes, maybe AI helped us really understand Pigment's problems, but I might ask one more question, and they typically sellers can't go deep. So again, maybe this is a big time saving, so you can go really knowledgeable around again what customers are trying to solve. And I think again, this could be a big time saver because not only did you nail the pitch, you potentially know the new messaging, but then you can become really curious, really important competency, curious on the competency.
Amazing. Um, Wrapping up with our final question here. Thanks so much to both of you. Final fun question is, what's a book or resource that you recommend to enablement leaders, champions, and the broader enablement community?
Andres,
You
want to
start.
go?
You,
Oh, I got
you
so
start.
many. I got so many. I mean, let me stall. Because I didn't know you were gonna have this, but I'll just hit it. So yeah, let me stall. Let me stall. It won't be a long stall. I just had to go. By the way, I'm a big fan. Great leaders are great readers. It doesn't have to be books, by the way. It can be publications, can be podcasts. I've got some great books behind me, but since relevant topics. So look, I have it right here. This, HBR, I literally read this cover to cover. This this publication, this was for January, February, how AI can transform your organization. And so there's so much good nuggets and things in here. So that'd be recommendation number one. And Andres hit it. I mean, this is something Nick recommended actually when we were at Databricks is to read the 4 levels of training evaluation about Kirkpatrick model. And so we had not only the team read this at Databricks, I got all of these books to the Pigment team here around the holidays. By the way, they got some other things besides the book from me, but those are 2 high recommendations that I think can keep you up to speed on HBR because there's great publications coming out every week and every month. But I think to Andres's part, I mean, the Kirkpatrick model for enablement professionals, like you really should become an expert in that. Andres, okay, that was me just kind of going out randomly to showcase a couple of things.
Yeah, I'm gonna go very. I mean, there's one book that I always read like once a year, which is Thinking Fast and Slow. Talks about
Mm.
the two systems. Nobel Prize winner book. It helps you understand how people like process emotion and when they make just intuition decisions versus actually use the logical part of the brain to do math. I think that's very important to affect the team. And I'm gonna there's another one that I haven't read, but it's my next read, and it's called Setting the Table by Danny Mayer. So we just hired a new enablement leader at Pigment, Danny Wasserman, who you know, Isha, and he loves hospitality. And this book talks about how to transform your business by treating your people well. And I think it reflects well the philosophy that we're trying to have in the enablement team, which is serve your people, treat them so well, invest so much in them that they'll just become your superpower. So I'm looking forward to read that book, and yeah, maybe it's one that the listeners should read as well.
Great.
Thank you both so much. This is incredibly insightful and educational. I also just love chatting with you both, and glad that we got to do it on a stage where we get to now showcase people all the amazing things happening at Pigment, but also that you both are individually doing both within Pigment and in the broader enablement community. So excited to continue working together, and thanks again.
You bet. Thanks for your partnership. I'm glad we're customers. Andres, well
Yeah, we
done.
love working with you.